Hi, class. My name is Rafael Borges, and today I'm going to be answering some of the common questions that I got on my presentation for strategic distribution options. So let's go off of the top. I have some notes here on the more popular questions that I got. So, one that I really heard a lot was how do businesses decide between digital distribution and traditional distribution? That's a great question because that is tricky to decide depending on which company that you're talking about. And there's really three factors that no matter the company they're looking at. The first one is customers' expectation, then service complexity, and then the cost to serve versus the value created. So basically, a company is sitting there and saying, "Hey, right now we're this old school brick and mortar. What is going to be the cost for us to basically digitize our services? Does this make sense for what we provide for the goods that we deal with? And then is the cost to the value the cost that is going to cost us, is this justified with the value that's going to bring in? Because depending on the business that you're referring to, like let's talk about Stop and Shop, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for them to change their distribution. It's a grocery store. Yes, they can start delivering things for you, which makes it a little bit of a hybrid model, but a grocery store is always going to be a grocery store. You get what I'm saying? But let's look at like mobile banking. You don't necessarily have to go to a bank to do certain things. If you really think about it, sometimes you just need to really give your approval to, proceed with, something in mobile banking. So you can do that digitally, and many companies have realized that, and most bankings nowadays are through that digital platform. So to answer the question is, you got to go through those three questions and see if it makes sense in your business, and make sure that the cost to value ratio makes sense as well. So hopefully that answers the question. The other very popular question that I got in the subject was, is strategic distribution invasive because of how much personal data it gathers? And this is a really tricky question to answer because it is going to vary from individual to individual. But I will say this: in the modern age, there are countless of platforms, apps, all taking your personal data if you know it or not. Truth be told, in a modern age, I don't think there's one thing that you do digitally that doesn't take your information. So I get the concern, and it's one that I very much have because these companies almost know everything about us. But unfortunately, it's almost comes with the territory of the modern age where that is what it is. And once again, this is very personal to me because even though I understand these companies have my personal information, I know it's kind of hard to avoid it. And I know that once I agreed their terms of services, I'm basically agreeing to give them my information to use that platform. So I guess a little bit of a personal choice. If you want to use these company services, you're gonna have to agree to give your personal data. And if you're not okay with that, you just, unfortunately, won't be able to use their software, because there's no way for them to not use your personal data to make their decisions better, because they need to know how the consumer is acting. They need to understand how the consumer is behaving, and then that way they can alter their strategies to meet the consumer's behavior, and they won't know that if they don't have their data. So like I mentioned, it's a very tricky um, subject, and it really depends on which viewpoint you see. I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer. It's more up to the individual. And then I got another question that mentioned a combination of different companies coming together, and often use Uber Eats or DoorDash. And basically, the question is set up in this format: if Starbucks or said company partners up with some delivery company, is this kind of a hybrid distribution model? And absolutely, it's a very unique hybrid distribution model because one company is now allocating that service or that resource to another company, but that very much is still a hybrid model because Starbucks doesn't deliver, but guess what? Uber Eats does. So you can, create that hybrid model where you have a storefront that, is just a storefront, but now you have this other service that delivers, and you combine them together. The storefront can now get their goods to you. So that very much is a hybrid model. A unique one, keep that in mind, because your typical hybrid models are created from the company itself. So if Starbucks was to create a delivery service, that would be a better example of a hybrid model, but by no means that very much is still a hybrid model. So any combinations of, X company that doesn't do X service contract another company that does Y service, they come together, they do XYZ. That very much is a hybrid company. And then I have one final question that I very much love to answer, and it basically touches on how can companies improve digital service delivery without losing the human touch. And I know that's on top of a lot of people's mind. Just the subject of keeping the human touch when AI is essentially taking over almost everything. I know this is something that a lot of people are discussing in many different industries. And my response to this specific subject is to make sure that you have different human interactions baked into the system. So this could mean a real person that they talk to if they're troubleshooting, maybe a real person that's in a live chat responding to them, some kind of human element that they know, like, hey, even though most of this is automated, if I do need to speak to a human being, if I do need to get a hold of someone, that is present in some form or shape. So I think that's how you keep the human touch in this type of subject. But I also think that that's in any subject, the best way to keep that human touch. Just try to add those human elements where they make sense, where they could make a difference and not cost too much money. So but these are the questions that I found a lot of reoccurrence on, so I wanted to address that. Thank you, everyone, for the feedback, and I'm looking forward to continuing the class. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Ciao, ciao.